Welcome and good afternoon, everyone, to TEDx Copenhagen Live. My name is 𝐤𝐻𝐢𝐿 and I have the pleasure of being the host for these Future of Work events. We have 10 sessions for you, where we will provide you the latest insights with the 20 minutes exclusive interviews with business specialists and strategic advisors who will bring to you different perspectives on the future of work and how it's going to impact us. Today we will have the third session, which will be around the paradox of the digital era. And according to Citrix, almost 50% of workers today consider themselves as digital natives. And already by 2025, that number is supposed to increase with 75%. 75%, it's a high number. So how do we transform our society, our organizations, our workforce, our workplace into this new reality where rapid digital transformations are changing the way that we live our everyday life? We need to be aware of what does it mean to the workforce that a generation of digital natives will cover the majority of our workforce in the future. So which paradoxes and which dilemmas arises between, on one side, the analog world and on the other side, the digital world? And why do we need to understand these paradoxes? In other words, what must organizations and leaders do in times where the workforce dynamics changes rapidly? Well, this is what we will unfold today at our third session, The Paradox of the Digital Era. Our guest today is Søren Schultz Hansen, who is an expert in digital natives and digital transformation. He's also the owner of Generation Digital, and he has more than 10 years of experience in collecting digital data. He's the external lecturer at the Copenhagen Business School, and he's also published books like The Paradoxes of Digitalization. And in April, his new book, Young Voices in the Digital Democracy, will reach the market, showing the latest studies on how democracy in Denmark is influenced by the digital age. So we are very excited to invite Søren in our TEDx studio. So let's see if we have a connection. Hi, Søren. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
And thank you for joining us.
Of course. Sounds very interesting.
Yeah, you are truly an expert / maybe some would say a nerd within understanding the digital natives. You come with more than 10 years of experience where you have gathered extensive empirical data on digital natives, digital management, and how the workforce works in this digital area. So I'm extremely...
So from the very beginning, you managed to make me an old nerd as well.
Yeah, I think that that a lot of us go in that category where we cannot put the phrase on our CV being digital natives. But I'm very curious with a person like you, why this topic is so relevant. Why is it important to understand these paradoxes, and what does it mean to you?
Well, the reason why I've been doing studies on digital native the last more than 10 years actually is really twofold. First of all, it's very interesting to do a characterization of a generation of people who, as the first in the history of man, have lived all their lives in the digital world. The people I study, they are between 18 and 28, and the oldest one of them, they were born at the same time as the modern internet, World Wide Web, and they've lived all their lives with the mobile phones, and all their from their earliest life they've lived with the social media. So that's very interesting to study a generation and to try to characterize a generation who have lived in the digital world that we all live in all their lives. That's one reason why I've been doing these studies. And the other reason is very closely connected to the first reason. And that's because what I see when I study a generation of digital natives is a lot of more general overall input about the digital world, in general, meaning that these people give me insights as to how to understand the digital world in general, because they've never experienced anything but the digital world. So really, it's a way of a means to understand the digital worlds and the dynamics and the logics in the digital worlds on a broader base. That's the other reason why I'm interested in the first generation of digital natives.
And why, I mean, for the rest of us, why do you believe that the topic is relevant for us? What is it that we need to understand having this change in the workforce with digital natives, you can say, covering the majority of the workforce, almost from now, but also in the short period of time?
Yeah, first of all, of course, because I think it's very difficult to ignore that the digital media and the digital world is very important. It has influence on almost every part of our lives, our professional lives, our private lives, the way we have built relations, the way we build democracy as my latest studies are about. So that's the first reason. And secondly, a more specific reason, and that's because I can see in my studies the last more than 10 years that there are differences, important differences in how managers, for instance, in my age, around 50, understand management and professional relations to young people. And therefore, I think it's very important for people like me at my age, if they want to manage, if they want to lead, if they want to motivate a new generation of digital natives coming into work now and being a larger and larger part of the workforce, we need to understand these differences, because if we don't understand these differences, we'll make errors and grave errors, and we'll do the opposite. We'll unmotivate them. We'll scare them away instead of recruiting them, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. One of the things that takes up a lot of discussions in media right now is surveillance, and that's also one of the paradoxes, having the analog world meeting the digital world. And I mean, we all have the apps which can monitor our health, how much we exercise, how much we sleep. We can even see who's we've been interacting with and whether or not they have had corona or has corona, which is nice on one side. But there's also a fear in society that all of the data that is being collected in all of these apps and that is being collected as we browse through different web pages, that we don't know what that data is used for, and if it has a consequence on us that we don't know the consequence of today. So what are your thoughts on that paradox, which kind of covers the fear of civilians?
Yeah, and the paradox you're talking about is that on the one side we fear this surveillance. We're talking about it. I don't know if you know it, but George Orwell's 1984 Big Brother society, and so on and so forth. On the other hand, we do it deliberately, and we do it of our own free will. We leave a lot of data, and we give a lot of data to, as you said, the apps that we use. So there's a paradox of fear on the one hand, and then a necessity for us as individuals to give a lot of data, because if we don't give a lot of data to the apps that we use, they're not so easy to use, and we can't take the knowledge out of them, the knowledge that we need. So I'm convinced that of course we'll see more and more surveillance in the future, because we have the We have the means, we have the technology. Now, under Corona, we see an increased number of homework, and if a manager needs to control or to know what an employee is doing, if he or she is not at work physically but at home, we need to register digitally what this employee is doing. And
Søren, with your knowledge about surveillance, should we be concerned? I mean, is it something?
Definitely.
Because
yes,
you also
definitely.
talk about, the positive parts of it, that it can help
Yeah,
our
but that's the
everyday
reason
life.
why. Yeah, that's the reason why we should be concerned. It's not because it's bad. Because no. It's because it's extremely good. There are all these things we do because it's good. But that doesn't change the fact that we deliver a lot of data, and that we are surveyed 24/7 in all parts of our lives. So the problem is not that it's bad. That was the problem actually in George Orwell's 1984. That the only one benefiting from the surveillance in the novel 1984 was the state, and was the big brother. But in 2021, we all benefit from the increase in surveillance, because a lot of things get better, a lot of things get more easy. So the reason why we should be concerned, and the reason why I'm certain that it will increase, is not that it's bad, but it's because it's very good for all parts, really.
Yeah.
And that's another point. Paradox, really.
It is, and it's a new paradox.
It's a problem
that we have not.
It's good, not because it's bad.
Good. So now that's straight. Another thing that you are touching upon in your latest book, The Paradoxes of Digitalization, where you talk about the paradoxes and the dilemmas that arises between, on one side, the analog world, and on the other side, the digital work. And if we are looking at those two forces in the workforce, which paradoxes do you see arise in companies when you have, you can say, the digital natives or the digital native generation entering the workforce, which may clash a little bit with the traditional way that the organizations are set up? You mentioned yourself as a leader from another generation. What can we expect the paradoxes of two different workforces having to work together and being productive together?
Well, a lot of things. So maybe I could just give you a concrete example from my studies illustrating a clash, I hope. I interviewed at a large Danish global food company. I interviewed both a very, very skilled manager, not that old, but not digital natives, and she was very concerned about being present for her employees. And because she knew, as I said, she was a very skilled leader, so she knew that it was important for her, as being a good leader, that he was present, that her employees could meet her and see her and talk to her and stuff like that. And because she knew that it was so important, she had every 2 weeks 1 hour of conversation, of dialogue, of personal development dialogue with each and every one of her employees. And that was the way she felt that she was a present, or she conducted a present leadership. But the interesting thing was that I talked to some of her employees, and they talked about these meetings too, but they considered them as a lack of presence, because they said, how can my leader be present if I only talk to her once every 2 weeks? So that was a very specific example of, I see in my studies, between where we misunderstand each other. We have a very skilled manager, a very skilled leader who thinks she creates presence in her leadership by talking to her young employees as often, some would say, as 1 hour every two weeks. And on the other hand, we have her employees who consider it as a lack of presence.
Maybe see it more as a checkbox from the manager that and I have had my check-in and I'm being a present and visible leader. But what is it then when you have so much knowledge about the digital natives? What is it that, or how is it that you can make a difference being, you can say, a digital immigrant leader, not being birthed or giving birth to with an iPhone in your phone? What would be your 3 best advices to these digital immigrant leaders in leading the digital natives and getting them to be as productive and successful as possible?
Yeah, first of all, of course, they have to read my books. That's obvious.
Check on that, Yeah.
No, seriously, it's important. That's the reason why I'm interested in it. It's important to get an understanding of the logics and the dynamics of this new generation of digital natives. Another specific advice I'd give to managers of my age trying to understand and trying to be better at motivating and managing digital natives as employees is to, as the example I just gave, think about being present in time instead of present in room, meaning that think about the way that you have a relation with your young employees can be by SMS or chat or any other of the digital means or tools you have, and do it a lot more often. I often give the advice to managers that they should consider being better at being or to increase the quantity in their management, not necessarily the quality of their management, because it's to turn up the volume of the quantity, the frequency that makes the big difference towards this new generation of digital natives. Of course, you have to be a qualitatively good leader as well, but the most difference you can make is by turning up the quantity, the frequency of your management. And then practice, as perhaps the third advice, what I call GPS management. And that's a kind of metaphor I use to illustrate that when you motivate young digital natives, it's important to have focus primarily on where to turn the next time, as you do when you navigate by GPS. Actually, when you navigate by GPS, you're very focused on 300 meter, 200 meter, 100 meter, and now I have to turn and I have to turn left. Yeah. And that's a good metaphor for the how to motivate and manage, lead digital natives, and less focus on where to end and more focus on where to begin and where to make the next step. So I call it digital nonsense. I call it GPS management or GPS planning.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes a little bit against what we were talking about, having the bi-weekly one-to-ones, but with the GPS you need to be on a shorter distance.
Not to talk about the yearly personal development dialogues that we are used to having. And that's not, by the way, that's not only digital natives who think that a yearly conversation about how to develop yourself in the work. That's also elder generation would say that's nonsense.
Yeah. All right. So one of the last questions to you, Søren, is around the future of work, which is our overall theme. And in the future of work, or in the future, we have to live off what cannot be digitalized or taken over by automation or robotics, which is, development, innovation, co-creation, communication, collaboration, ethics. And the World Economic Forum state that 65% of the jobs that will be taken up in the future by the generation that are being born today does not exist. So there's a lot of uncertainty around the jobs that we'll see in the future. So where do you see kind of the interface between digitalization, AI, robotics, etc., and human beings taking us in the future of work?
Yeah, but obviously it's very, very difficult to predict. And actually, I advise against trying to predict too much, because if you emphasize too much on predictions, you tend to follow your prediction instead of following the actual reality. So, but however,
it's going back to the GPS and not.
Yeah, exactly. But I have no doubt that the people that I've been studying, the digital native, there's no doubt about it that, well, to them, robotics, artificial intelligence, and that's just a fact of life, literally. Yeah. So that's not the same as saying that they'll just embrace it, but when I talk to them, they are very capable of reflecting and seeing disadvantages and problems and stuff like that. But as I said, literally, it is a fact of life. So they will, it will increase. They will accept it as a totally natural thing to work with algorithms, artificial intelligence, robotics, and stuff like that, whether we like it or not.
Great. Thank you so much, Søren, for taking the time to join us here today at TEDx Copenhagen Live in our studio. And thank you so much to all of our followers. Remember, you can still see some of the other live sessions that we have done before around the theme Future of Work. And remember to tune in for our fourth session, which will be on March 24, around the topic Workforce Tech, the dark side. So hope you enjoy the rest of the day, and thank you so much. See you again soon. Bye.